The future of Dragon Ball Super is nearly limitless with the amount of concepts and ideas that the show could ultimately use and run with. There is no telling as to what the ceiling is for Dragon Ball going into the future, and with the ongoing Dragon Ball Super manga, the road that leads to the end is seemingly infinite when looking down the horizon. This is Expanding Dragon Ball, a new series on the channel to where we are going to be discussing and analyzing concepts and ideas that Dragon Ball Super can ultimately end up using in its future. As one of the most talked about concepts within the fandom that we are going to be discussing here today are the concepts and ideas of having a serious consequence for those taking action and being carefree, mainly with Goku, and having Goku fully master Ultra Instinct and eventually having the long anticipated Goku vs Beerus rematch. As once more before we begin, if you are new to this channel and have a love and passion for all things Dragon Ball and anime related, then be sure to go on ahead and smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications to never miss a single upload on this channel. To in which, if you guys love Dragon Ball Super, then be sure to give this video a big thumbs up by slapping that like button down below, as well as dropping your thoughts in the comment section below as to how you guys personally feel about the ongoing arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Now, Dragon Ball Super, given what it had offered to those who read the manga and watched the anime, introduced some of the most compelling and driven concepts that shaped Dragon Ball Super into becoming what it had become today, but one would argue that the payoffs were ultimately predictable by the end. And it's statistically proven that a fan of a predictable product, any product, develops a habit in losing interest in their once favorite show, being that the narrative has not only become repetitive to the point of annoyance, but the viewer simply has no investment within the product anymore. And with all that's happened in Dragon Ball Super, ranging from episodes 1 to episode 131, there was virtually no endgame consequence outside of the Goku Black arc by misusing the concept of time and creating a seemingly unbeatable enemy that forced the King of All to step in and erase everything, all on behalf of those who started the battle but were unable to finish it. As Dragon Ball Super continues to progress through the manga and one day through the anime, there needs to be a level of unpredictability that not only puts the characters' morals into question, but also creates a lasting effect to where every choice made by the protagonist has an opposite action and reaction to what they've chosen. And a good example of a circumstance that had absolutely no consequence to its bearing was the Tournament of Power, because by the end, despite which universe had won, despite the individuals standing last in the ring by themselves, the Omni Kings made it clear that unless they chose to make a selfish wish, they would have been erased. So the Omni Kings expected for there to be a selfless wish, which ultimately led to everybody coming back, which of course was predicted by the beginning of the Tournament of Power, which, when looking at the overall circumstance, had absolutely no consequence to its bearing. If the Omni King were to want to permanently erase a universe for whatever reason they deem fit, then the action that should be taken is the universe remaining erased, being that the consequence was already chosen and the circumstance being the Omni King simply wanted to destroy it. So going into the future of Dragon Ball, despite it being Goku, Vegeta, Broly, Beerus, Gohan, Android 17, or any other characters within the show, whoever makes a conscious decision to take action in any given circumstance should have an opposite consequence to their choice. So if Goku decides to fight someone or do something outside of his own control, there should be a consequence as to what Goku ends up doing that ultimately allows him to pay the price in the end. Having morality confliction makes the show that much more enjoyable, and by suspending the viewer's disbelief and getting them immersed that much more in the show, by making things less predictable and more or less based on consequence and reaction alone, would only make the narrative that much more important going forward in the show itself. And to use an example, just when you thought character A was about to do this, instead the opposite happens. Just in case you believe that villain A is about to do this, but instead the opposite happens, suspending your disbelief and having you assume that something is in fact going to happen, when instead the total opposite ends up taking place. And despite predictability having to be a huge factor in the show, let's say for example if character A ends up following through with their initial plans, there is an initial consequence behind their action that leads to something greater down the line. And to further give you one of the best possible examples, a consequence that could be long lasting in the show is if someone ends up destroying or killing off the Supreme Kai, which is a direct connection to Beerus, wiping out Beerus completely. So of course killing off the Supreme Kai leads to the death of the God of Destruction of Universe 7. Consequence, reaction, payoff. And without consequences, there is no reward. So Dragon Ball Super needs to introduce an element to where every decision that is ultimately made extracts a heavy toll on a person's conscience needs to be incorporated. The show doesn't necessarily have to solely rely on this one singular structure, but by having this element be included, would it only make the show that much more enjoyable. Now, as for Goku, his story, by having him finally surpass and eclipse Beerus in power, needs to finally come to a close. We understand that Mastered Ultra Instinct is supposed to be the absolute completed power that exceeds even the powers of a God of Destruction, which we've only seen be demonstrated in its full context when Goku battled against Universe 11's Jiren, in which Jiren was the only person that forced Goku into using this power. And with everything happening outside of the Dragon Ball Super manga, with Goku being a person who was always written to overcome any and all obstacles placed in front of him, at some point within Dragon Ball Super, Goku needs to fully be able to gain full control of Ultra Instinct and at long last have the long anticipated rematch against Beerus at full power. If you think about it, this has been building up ever since the beginning of Dragon Ball Z/Dragon Ball Super Battle of Gods, a power that rivals a god, an enemy that is seemingly unbeatable. It's safe to assume that until now, Beerus had not yet used his full power against Goku in any capacity. And even with characters like Broly, Jiren, as powerful as they may be, we still don't know how powerful a God of Destruction truly is when unrestricted and using their full power. The rematch between Goku and Beerus had been long brewing ever since the beginning, and if the creators are ready to have Beerus finally pass the torch onto Goku in being superior in strength and power, then that's the choice that they're ultimately going to have to run with. And Beerus versus Goku is unquestionably one of the most anticipated and talked about battles that we've ever seen in Dragon Ball, but despite who wins between the two, you're going to have fans on each side strongly disagree with this direction. And I think what's missing is a conclusive narrative between the two, incorporating both acceptance and deliverance. And with Goku finally setting his sights in overcoming the God of Destruction, it would only give Goku more of a reason to use everything he's learned and experienced since fighting Beerus initially during the events of Dragon Ball Z/Super Battle of Gods to his advantage. Now, it's easy for someone to imply that Beerus could simply Hakai Goku from existence, and to some extent, to further test the validity of Beerus actually pulling this off, I think that they should go and try to use this concept when Dragon Ball Super inevitably returns. Because then why introduce a fight and rematch that the fandom had been anticipating ever since the beginning if you're not planning on having both characters go all in from the start in giving each other the best possible battle that they can possibly muster out. So I think that by having Goku use every trick in the book and by having Beerus do the same, would we only then find out what both fighters can do in a situation to where both of their backs are up against the wall, both of them are forced in using their full powers against each other, and it would further go as far as to showcase not only the true power of the God of Destruction of Universe 7, but also the full capabilities of Ultra Instinct Goku if pushed to that very breaking point by Beerus himself. And what's most fascinating is the fact that we've never seen Beerus at max power before, and it was never implied that Beerus ever had Ultra Instinct, so if the gods do struggle to somehow maintain it or at least use Ultra Instinct for a long period of time, then it's still within the realm of possibility that Beerus could, and hence the word could, be able to somehow tap into this level himself, but unable to maintain it for too long. So with Goku then having the upper hand on Beerus could only force Beerus into possibly even tapping into this power himself, in which would thus ultimately create an end result of possibly seeing a concept such as Ultra Instinct Goku versus a hypothetical Ultra Instinct Beerus. Now, since the beginning, the creators of the show have hammered down the idea that Beerus never found Goku or Vegeta worthy of anything, and even asked Whis several times on several different occasions if it was actually worth their time in having to spend the time necessary to train them, with Whis always implying that indeed it was. Which ultimately goes back to the original concept of this video, which happens to be consequence, in the fact that there has to be a legitimate reason as to why a Beerus versus Goku rematch should even happen in Dragon Ball Super to begin with. And one of those main narratives that should be pushed going forward is the consequences and actions of Goku that has ultimately forced Beerus's hand in stepping forward to further teach Goku a lesson for two simple reasons. Number one, to further gauge Goku's power, skills, and abilities after having to fight him initially during Battle of Gods, and number two, taking action on Goku for all of the choices that he had made prior in putting Universe 7 at risk, especially with the consequence involving the Tournament of Power. What Beerus needs to drive home to Goku is that consequences cannot possibly go without having some repercussion behind the choices being made, which is why it is also prevalent in seeing Beerus having to fight Goku at least one more time in Dragon Ball Super, because it would further create and establish the narrative as to not only how strong a God of Destruction truly is, at least the one that dwells within Universe 7, but we would also be able to gauge Mastered Ultra Instinct when compared to a God of Destruction at full power, which I believe is desperately needed in order to further gauge Goku's ability to see how strong he is within Universe 7, not counting Whis, because as of this recording, as of this point right now, Goku is significantly weaker than Whis being the strongest within Universe 7. But one must also beg the question as to where we go after the initial rematch between Goku and Beerus. Despite if Beerus ends up beating Goku or if Goku ends up beating Beerus, there needs to be an established narrative between the two for there to be a suitable outcome for each winner if of course Beerus ends up beating Goku, or if Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku somehow ends up beating Beerus. And this goes back to the idea of consequence that was initially established early on in the video, because what kind of consequence do we get if Goku somehow defeats Beerus, or the opposite for Beerus beating Goku? As I don't really think there is a consequence that comes with Beerus beating Goku, as the outcome I do think would ultimately be the same as it was in Battle of Gods, with Beerus having to simply move on and not really caring too much about the growth level of the Saiyans. But if there was any other alternative circumstance with Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku somehow defeating Beerus, then there has to be an established consequence that comes with that action. For example, where does Goku go on the food chain after further having to defeat Beerus? The only other alternative to surpassing and defeating a God of Destruction is inevitably and ultimately having the goal of somehow defeating and surpassing that of the Angel, which we already know that Goku at this current point in time does not possess the necessary skill set or power to defeat Universe 7's Whis. But even then, Goku's rematch against Beerus needs to be not only lengthy, but meaningful when having them both battle against each other, given the fact that Beerus had given Goku a chance before, sparing his life after initially Goku had ran out of his Super Saiyan God powers during their first battle, and seeing how much Goku has grown throughout the years, throughout the course of Dragon Ball Super, the fight between Goku and Beerus needs to not only be meaningful in its approach, but also have a conclusive ending that closes the arc between Goku and Beerus ever since it initially opened during Dragon Ball Z / Super Battle of Gods, and finally having that definitive conclusion between the two in seeing how far Goku has come in directly rivaling against the powers of a God of Destruction, in that being Beerus. As this really does open the doors to so many concepts and possibilities within Dragon Ball Super as it continues in the form of the manga, and once it inevitably returns in the form of the anime. But a Beerus vs Goku rematch, due to all of the circumstances and all of the consequences through Goku's actions, needs to definitely have a conclusion going forward, especially closing off the arc between both Goku and Beerus. But in the end, I would like to get your thoughts in the comment section below about the future of Dragon Ball Super, and if you agree on the stance of consequences, and if they should include more of this when the series does inevitably end up returning, alongside your thoughts and ideas for the inevitable Goku vs Beerus rematch. Do you think that Goku should finally now surpass Beerus completely and defeat him during the course of their battle? Do you think that Beerus more or less still has the capabilities of defeating Goku, or do you think that perhaps somehow this inevitable fight might result in a rematch? I want to get your thoughts, opinions, and comments in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody. Once more, if you guys are unaware of the brand new merchandise we have on our channel, then you guys can go on ahead and click the link located down in the description box below and check out some of the hottest merch on the channel, two in which you guys can help support the channel by copying some dope merch located down in the description box below, alongside following me on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, and all of that good stuff located down below. Thank you all so much for watching once again. Tune back in for more, and of course, if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, slap a big fat like down below if you guys love Dragon Ball, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Peace.
This is the Galactic Emperor of the Universe, and of course I'm here to tell you to subscribe to UnrealEntGaming.
Also follow UnrealEntGaming on these social media platforms to stay connected at all times. And if you don't, then very soon you will all be dead! Oh, did someone say UnrealEntGaming? Oh my god.
The fuck's up, on? Put on some clothes!
Well, why don't you put on any clothes?
What? I don't need clothes. Jesus Christ, that's huge! What, Broly?
Frieza.
Uh-oh.
Prepare to die!
But once you get video, lots of likes, or Bill will turn you into chocolate! Vados, get over here! Tell these mortals that I'm the biggest UnrealEntGaming fan. This is my moment. I'm a part of his notification squad. Universe 7 can have all the fun. I just want the food.
And don't forget to leave a comment on this video. Show some love for the best community on YouTube.
Kakarot!